Hello everyone and welcome to DoubleDM podcast today, where we talk about players doing nothing and the game grinding to a halt, and how you as a GM and as a player can counteract that grinding to a halt. Because let's be real, who has fun at a game table where nothing happens? We are here for something to happen, be that a monster attacking, be that the players scheming plans, be that the players doing something or killing the BBEG or whatever, but there needs to happen something. But first, let's talk about our weeks, what happened in our lives and what Niels and I have been up to this week, and give you a little bit of an update so you can keep up with us, our campaigns, and also see where we are coming from why we are the right pick as a podcast for you to give you the advice you want, because how much you get the idea. Okay, so hi Niels, how are you doing?
Hi there. I'm doing good. University started again, so getting up early, hey, that's always...
You already mentioned that last time.
That's all a lot of fun, especially Thursdays, because I only have to go to university for 45 minutes. Nice. Fun fact, my drive there is 45 minutes each. Mm-hmm. So I travel 1.5 hours for a 45-minute lecture. Yay.
You have to attend?
No, I don't have to, but this is the basically organic chemistry 101. And this is the thing I want to specialize in with biochemistry and stuff like that. And therefore, I should have the basics down pretty good. And the professor makes really good, or does a really good lecture. Very understandable, explains everything really well, and writes everything that you need to know on the chalkboard, and gives out any special advice for how to learn and what to focus on.
So a good lecture then.
So it's a very, very, very good lecture, which I don't want to miss, but it's still a drag to drive 1.5 hours for 45 minutes.
Understandable, though.
Yeah, and tomorrow I'll be attending every Friday from 12 to 16 until 4 p.m. a physical or physics laboratory where I have to make some experiments or
why
do some
physics?
Because it's part of the curriculum that I have to do.
But chemistry, why physics lab? Like why not a chemistry lab?
Because that's separate from each other. Yeah. I don't know why I have to make experiments or do experiments. Yeah, I don't know why I have to do this with a pendulum and not on a conceptual scale with atoms and molecules. But anyways, I have to do it.
To teach you a lesson.
Probably about learning how to write protocols proper.
Probably. That's always the case.
Yeah.
I understand it.
The 2 semesters that I studied physics, I already did that, but I'm missing 2 experiments, so I can't use that. So I have to do the whole laboratory thing again because I'm missing 2 experiments.
And
Yay.
you have to do the full thing again. But do you only have to theoretically do the 2 experiments now, or
no?
So everything you did before becomes void.
Exactly.
Wow.
But the thing is, I still have the protocols here. I can just copy them and change the numbers because the experiments are still the same.
So completely useless to force you to do it again. But okay.
Exactly.
Everyone knows that you're doing it and no one can do anything to stop you.
Exactly. That's been my day and tomorrow.
That's been my day and tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. Anything non-TTRPG related for you that you want to talk about?
Yes.
Okay, hit me.
It's still job hunting. It's still finding the right place to work. And I have something. I'm not saying I 100% got it because I haven't signed a contract yet or have done any work, but I've been told they want me.
That's always a good sign.
Then they asked me if I want them to set up the contract or if I want to wait till tomorrow when I will finally visit the office, when I finally get to see the office for the first time, which is something that they said was optional, but I said it would be probably a good idea if I have to work here a bit to at least get one 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute feeling for the office. Like the way it worked was very in my favor because I like it when things are done quickly and efficiently. And
understandably
they exactly did that.
Perfect.
I got a call on Monday with, hey, this is me. I'm here. Do you have time to talk to me tomorrow with a little call to talk a little bit about the company and who you are and stuff like that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Boom. Tuesday, I got the call. I talked like for, I think, 25 to 30 minutes. Yeah, why don't you talk to the head of IT tomorrow? Then on Wednesday, yesterday, I talked to the head of IT and he said, looks good to me. I'm going to send some notes to the people that you're going to have to talk to again. Today I got the call. Do you want to come into the office on Friday? And do you want to set up the contract? Do you want to work? How much do you want to make an hour or stuff like that? And I'm like, perfect. So yeah, that's been the big non-TTRPG thing. Otherwise than that, I just played a lot of video games because it's the last time before I have to work.
Yeah, just use all the time you have.
Yeah,
understandable.
I'm very much in the mode of I have so much free time right now. I'm gonna use it because I'm a person. I like to work. That's why the podcasts exist. I like to do work for stuff. I like to do the social media work. I like to do the editing. I like to do the recordings because it's something I have to do. I hate it when I just sit around and do nothing because I'm the type of person that some people would say, yeah, I go to sleep, then I go take a nap or something. And I'm that person, I, for example, just can't do that.
Yeah.
Like every minute I don't do something, I just waste time, in my opinion. And having a job plus university, plus the podcast, plus my hobbies of kendo and video games, I very much can just do everything. And obviously there's TTRPGs, but those obviously as well. I have a very good week. Sunday is going to be a rest day for me I because this week has been filled to the brim with stuff. And then on Monday, actually, it's a holiday in Germany.
Yeah.
So perfect.
Just works out.
Works out. Long weekend, Sunday. Perfect.
It's finally a 2-day weekend for me. Finally, because I mean, it's a bit delayed for me because I have to work on Saturday, but I still have 2 free days after that. That's rare. But yeah, I'm going to enjoy those.
Yeah, you definitely deserve them. TTRPG related.
Yes.
First of all, Monday is going to be very fun for me because I blocked the whole day off for one thing specifically. And that is the Session 0 for a Curse of Strahd campaign with one of my all-time favorite people as the GM.
Hell yeah.
With one of my all-time favorite GMs as the GM. And with 2 of my all-time favorite players as fellow players.
And then there's me.
And then there's you, obviously.
Yeah, this will be amazing.
We will have a Curse of Strahd campaign, finally for me.
I know how much work you put into prepping this shit. It's amazing. Yeah,
no,
I played
can not wait.
A couple of sessions of Strahd with her as a GM in an old group that kind of stopped playing because of scheduling issues and personal disputes and stuff like that. But I fucking love that, or to play Strahd with her.
I love that. End of sentence.
Yeah. No, but I really can't wait to play with all of you. It will be fucking amazing.
Same. And then on Tuesday, we finally get to pick up back Tyranny of Dragons.
Okay.
For me. We have another member of the group that has decided to leave us, at least for a few months, because work, university together, he just cannot keep up with a twice a month schedule anymore. And we said, okay, that's fine. We want to play it, the rest of us, so we play. And we are taking on a few new members for our game, actually, that could play. This is not a call for people outside listening that you can apply to that game. I'm gonna be. This is a personal home game in German with my all-time best friends. Well, I would like to play with people from the internet or from Twitter or from the podcast, not in this game. And also, please stop trying. I don't want to sound mean when I say no to people that ask if they can play a game with me. But like, this is something I have to say, I think. If there's ever an ability to play a game with me, I will make it known to you. Trust me. But otherwise than that, please respect the privacy that I have friends that I want to play with all the time. And yeah, like this is again, please do not take this personal. I would love to play with a lot of people that are listening probably, and a lot of people that I talk to on Twitter, but I just can't.
There is a place and time for everything.
Yeah, there's a place and time for it. My personal home games are not.
Exactly.
I will say this. One thing, this is something I think we've never talked about for DoubleDM, but we are working on shows that have open casting calls. We don't want to keep our shows in-house all the time. There will be shows where we will cast people from the wider TTRPG space to work with us on creating shows. And there are two things holding us back to that. First of all, we have several shows in the works that we want to at least work so we can basically get at least our foot in the door on the actual play space. And second of all, we want, when we do casting calls, while everyone else in our group has said effectively that they are willing to do things for free for the podcast, I do not set that for casting calls. If we do casting calls, there will be paid work. But for that, we need money. If there is no money, I just cannot in good conscience say, I will cast people because I'm not able to pay them. Because from my best friends that have told me in private and in meetings and generally all the time, I can do this for free. You don't have to pay me. And still I want to pay them. But I cannot do that for strangers or at least acquaintances from the space. I just don't want to. And that's why there hasn't been an active casting call yet. But there will be one in sometime. Titan's Call will come out, then a second show will come out, maybe even a third. And then there will be active casting calls for most of the shows, I think, that we are producing.
But I can't wait for Titan's Call release. I'm going to listen to that over and over again. It was...
Please do on different podcatchers all the time so we get more listens.
Of course.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter, actually. Titan's Call has been a passion project. The thing is about Titan's Call, I've always talked about it as a passion project, right? But also, it's very much a prototype. After now editing most of the episodes or having listened to most of the episodes, raw recordings so far, it's very much a prototype. It's not the best. I know that's not the best we can do. Because the second show already shows that. Because it is better, even though we haven't recorded much of it.
But we had to start somewhere, right? You always have to start somewhere.
Exactly. We have to start somewhere. And Titan's Call is very much the show that gets our foot in the door and says, we are at least doing this. Now watch us make it good.
Exactly.
And I think that is very important in the space because a lot of people create content basically on a hobby level first with shitty audio. This is no offense to people, by the way. We had also shitty audio. Listen to episode 1 of DoubleDM and you will know exactly what I mean. If your first episode of your actual play sounds like that, that's okay. It's 60% of the actual plays that I have heard had very bad first episodes. Fucking Critical Role had a very shitty first episode in a technical sense, at least. That's no big deal. But Titan's Call isn't going to be any different. We had 2 people that have never done podcasting before that don't know how to use a mic before, and we tried to teach them. But even then, I didn't know much about using a mic. I now do. Yeah. Now I know how to edit voices as well. But at that point, it was just, well, let's do it. Because if we do it, we can keep going. This is about building momentum. And Titan's Call was very much about getting our foot in the door, saying we are here. Now witness us make great content.
Yeah, and learning by doing, basically. We learned along the way.
But do not believe Titan's Call is going to be the best show ever. Because personally, Personally, it is. For me, it is.
In my heart, it will always be.
But that's because I have very much a bias towards it.
Not just you.
But the others. But listeners might not necessarily. The audio quality of DoubleDM right now is better than the audio quality of Titan's Call's first season. Just because we upgraded equipment right after the first season of Titan's Call for every one of us.
Yeah.
But we also upgraded it because we have recorded so much Titan's Call and wanted it to at least sound consistent and not suddenly have a switch in like the last 2 episodes of equipment. So with that out of the way, be hyped for Titan's Call. It's coming very soon.
Hell yeah.
And with that, I think it's time for us to jump into our episode on the game Grinding to a Halt and what you as a game master can do about it. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey.
So, Amy, I recently had a one-shot where that I had to improvise real quick, but after my players got the quest that I just pulled out my ass, they didn't do anything for a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes even. They just sat there and didn't do anything, really. I had to come up with some shit to make them do something. So the game just doesn't stop after 10 or 15 minutes. But I wanted to ask you, do you have any ideas or tips on how to do it and why you should interject these circumstances? Or do you have an idea why something like this happens in the first place?
Let's take a step back first. Lay the groundwork for me. What quest was it? How was the whole thing framed? How did it happen? Or if I want to know the story behind it, actually.
Okay. Well, it was basically quick and dirty because I just figured it out or heard that that one player is missing 2 or 3 hours before we played. So I didn't really have time to prepare anything. There was a lord. His father died a couple of days back. He would be the next one in line to take the throne, but someone challenged him.
Okay.
Through physical confrontation. They basically sacked the castle. And they needed some sort of artifact to challenge them in a one-on-one combat to claim back what is rightfully his.
Okay.
But needed help getting that artifact. So he hired the party to go somewhere, go to that temple, I think it was a temple, and retrieve that specific artifact and bring it back to him. And he heard about this party because he was a local lord and they saved one city. So they met up in a tavern and got all the things that they needed, where the rough direction or the rough location of the temple itself, how far it is, and what they need to do. And then they just sat there for a bit. That's basically the groundwork.
Okay. And then they didn't do anything. How did that play out in the game?
They just sat there and waited for something to happen, I guess, after the quest giver basically, again, left the tavern.
So the quest giver came in, asked for people to help. And the players then just didn't do anything.
They agreed. Then the quest giver went up to his room.
Yeah.
And then they just sat there for 10 minutes, not discussing how to approach this, but just do we go now or don't we go now or go in the morning? They decided to go now, but then didn't go. They just said, okay, yeah, we want to go now. But do we? Do we have something else to do? No. And then just a couple of minutes doing nothing.
Okay. So they agreed to the quest.
Yes.
They said, okay, yeah, we're doing it. Were they given further instructions after that? Were they asked to be at a specific place at a specific point in time, or
not a specific point in time? They were told where the temple is, that this artifact is in, that they need to retrieve, and that there is this temple and where it is. That's it. They don't have any specific timeline they had to achieve.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. And what did you do to make them then go to the temple?
Basically, I just asked 3 or 4 times if they want to go now, and then they said yes, but then talked about something else, then didn't talk about 1 or 2 minutes again. Then I asked again, and this was about 2 or 3 or 4 times. And then I just said, okay, if you want to leave now, you leave now. Just tell me yes, and then we move on and go into the basically travel sequence.
Okay.
So that's the thing that I want to try to avoid the next time something like this happens. Do you have an idea why or how or why this happens or how I can do that?
Why this happens? I think why. Let's zoom out a bit on the issue because, right, this is a specific example you obviously brought forth.
Yeah.
And I could also name examples of at my tables where players were sitting in the tavern and doing nothing or waiting for something to happen. Zooming out a bit, let's talk about the game grinding to a halt, or let's say the fiction not moving forward. I think that's a better way because obviously your players talking in a tavern and having in-character talks about stuff that they find important, like, for example, a plan that they need to make. Can we, like, for example, okay, there's this temple. We need to go there to get this artifact. Can we get some information on the temple, right? This question being brought forth and discussed at the table in the tavern isn't the game grinding to a halt.
Yeah.
Or, well, it somewhat can feel like that to the GM because the players are discussing something that is necessarily unimportant, but the players don't know that. But the fiction itself is not grinding to a halt, right? The players are still in the fiction. They are now discussing as characters, or maybe even in indirect speech or just on a surface level, what some information that they have so they can better formulate the fiction.
Yeah.
So the first step is obviously realizing what is happening because there's a lot of different nuance to it, in my opinion. There isn't just the game is stopped, my players aren't actually fighting an enemy or dethroning a Dark Lord or working towards it. That's not the way it works. And we know that. The thing is always to evaluate the situation in that quick moment of, okay, something feels like the fiction is getting deflated, the fun and entertainment is void what is happening right now. Okay, the players are sitting in a tavern. They are discussing something, but only on a surface level because apparently they don't know what to do. That you have to ask yourself sometimes, okay, is this my players actually playing out their characters who don't want to go now to the temple? Or is this my players actually not knowing if they should go now? This is a very subtle difference.
Yeah.
It's very hard to spot. And that's it. It's a hard to spot difference between the players sitting at the table in the tavern and as their characters not knowing what to do and the players themselves not knowing what to do. In most cases, it might actually lead to the same outcome, nothing. But it also can lead to different outcomes. So it is important to realize what exactly is happening, to analyze the situation in that few minutes or few seconds that you have. You can take longer, obviously. You don't have to hone this necessarily as a skill. I'm just here to say that if you think that your game is grinding to a halt as a GM, look at the reason why you think that. And then, as dumb as it sounds, grab the problem by the root. Grab it by the root and pull the weed out because it's gonna destroy your garden.
Yeah.
Because personally, there's nothing more I hate in a TTRPG than doing nothing. When we are at a table and discussing plans, and I think my plan is the best, but the group decides for a different plan. As a player, I am still okay with that because we're doing something. The discussing of the plans is doing something, and then executing one of the plans is doing something. Worse would be that we are not doing any of the both plans and are just sitting there waiting for something to happen. Because I am not at a TTRPG table and carve out 4 hours plus travel time if the session is in person to then do nothing in that time.
Exactly.
And obviously, this is very, this might sound contrary to our taking your time episode, but in my opinion, it isn't. Because the difference is, taking your time with something is just letting things cook, giving things time to develop, and also sometimes taking a few seconds for yourself of silence, but not a feeling of nothing is happening and I don't know how to make something happen right now.
Yeah, I think the example that you just given with the plan basically is a good sign of showing the difference between taking your time and something grinding to a halt. Because if you actively discuss the plan all the time, the whole 2 or 3 hours of your session, it might not be for everyone, but there is still something happening that is beneficial to the game.
The fiction is moving forward because we can then translate that into in-game session, the characters sitting around a table and discussing their plan.
Exactly. And you might even take a couple of minutes to just think about the plan itself. So you take your time, but still move the fiction forward in that time.
Yeah.
But if you're not discussing the plans and just sitting there and you have 2 plans, but you don't want to do either of them, this is where the problem begins.
One of the fun things that I have for every of my characters, when I write a backstory, or for example, because I just did that yesterday, I wrote a backstory for another character I have. I made it sure that this character is never gonna be drivenless or driveless.
Yeah.
Because when you have a drive for your character as a player, you can always try to revert back to that drive and then just act upon it. It can be hard at times and can be easy at times. But if you have something that makes your character act at every single given point in time in the fiction, that's a good character in my opinion, because the character now is engaging with the game and the world and the NPCs and the other player characters and everything else to make sure that something is happening. We are here to have fun playing a game, not playing the game, not driving the fiction forward, not role-playing. Is not whatever way you want to play the game, do it. Because if you're not doing it, then we reach a point where you're not having fun. And then the whole concept of this becomes useless.
Exactly.
Again, there can be points in time where there is nothing happening, because that's what the fiction in that moment calls for. A moment of quiet, a moment of silence, a moment of thought. But that's then still the fiction having called for it and it then happening. And after that, something happens again. If there's no moment after the moment you're currently in fiction, you are grinding to a halt at that moment in fiction.
Yeah.
You don't want that. Because at that point, it's best to just say, yeah, it's done. And no one wants to end their one-shot in a tavern where the players haven't even moved a bit, or their campaign because their players don't know what to do about the Dark Lord right now. So how do we counteract that?
I think one good way of doing that is just ask your players directly if there's something missing for them that they need to know, or if they're just in option paralysis, you could say.
Also, a very important thing to keep in mind, there's also a moment where there's too many options and you don't know which of the ones to take.
Yeah, but I think the biggest part or the biggest thing to counteract this is just ask your players directly. Because in my game, after a couple of minutes, I just said, okay, what do you want to do? Or do you need any other information for that? Because if you're not doing anything, why are we still here, right? And then answer these questions that the characters have honestly. Because if you don't answer them honestly or answer them in the way that their characters would know, then they can't make a decision based on the information they have. Because they just have bullshit information if you just throw random shit at them. But if you know all the information they have is from a unreliable source through basically just rumors, still give them the information that they need to move the story or the fiction forward.
Yeah.
Ask them about it and give the information they need.
I think this is important. And this sounds very unintuitive at first, but if you think about it, it's exactly what you have to do. And it's exactly what's happening most of the time if you're there in the moment. Breaking the fiction to move the fiction forward is your best bet in every single case, most of the time, in my opinion. This goes for basically everything, because everything we've talked about on DoubleDM so far is always, you're a person playing a game about characters in a fantasy world or in a sci-fi world or in a cyberpunk world or in a Western world or in a modern whatever world that are doing stuff. And we've talked about it a few times that this is kind of dumb fucked meta shit. But we're playing a game for fun, for the people that are playing the game, not for the characters. We're playing it for the people playing. So breaking the fiction and talking to the people directly is a valid way of making sure the game is fun for everyone.
Yeah.
Session zeros, after session checkups, in between campaign checkups, breaking immersion in combat to ask if the combat is great is even good. Okay, do you want the comics to be more dramatic? Easy peasy. Okay, let's make it more dramatic. Boom. Every single point where you break fiction isn't bad, and you do not want to completely erase breaking fiction from the play experience of a game.
Yeah.
Because then you're not playing a game anymore.
Exactly.
You're doing something else. That something else can be great. I'm not gonna deny it. But if you're breaking fiction sometimes, that's something that happens. And the thing is, right, wherever you look for other ways of fiction, video games, movies, series, books, music, whatever. Movies and TV are the best way to explain this. Do you really think the movie is done in a one take?
Exactly.
Obviously not. Most movies have scenes that are 20 to 30 seconds long or even go to like 2 minutes. Or not scene, but shots. Not scenes, shots. Between every shot you see, there's a break in the fiction for the people doing the fiction you are enjoying. You are watching a polished version that is made to erase all points of no fiction in that movie or in that series. Because that's what you want. But in the creation phase, which TTRPGs always are, TTRPGs are always in the creation phase and always in the enjoyment, entertaining phase, there will be parts where fiction is broken. And they're not bad, they're needed to make sure that the fiction itself gets better.
Yeah, and that the fun stays on the enjoyable level that everyone wants. Just breaking things is most of the time the best way to handle certain situations. Just because when you see cracks in the fiction that start, it's sometimes better just to tear the whole thing down and rebuild it together to make it even stronger.
And this is the thing. Ask your players. Hey, why aren't you doing anything? Is the objective not clear enough? Now we get to something that I've recently been seeing a lot of talk about online. Sandbox campaigns.
Yeah.
I don't want to dive deep on them. I just realized that this is kind of fits great because a lot of people often say, like, there's a lot of talk about sandbox campaigns having this exact problem. And I disagree. They can lead to that problem. I am not gonna lie. I am still not a fan of sandbox campaigns, personally. But saying that sandbox campaigns will lead to your players not doing anything because they have no clear set goal in motion or no path to walk upon is just false.
Yeah.
There's still stuff happening in the world and the players are still gonna do something. They just have to take more initiative, maybe. That's not a bad thing. If your players are telling you we don't want a sandbox campaign, which mine, for example, did, I had a campaign that was very sandboxy, not necessarily full sandbox, but somewhat sandbox. And my player said we would like a little bit more of a clear goal all the time. And I'm like, cool. If you want that, we've broken fiction to talk about this. I will break and rebuild everything in this campaign for you guys. Because otherwise, this campaign is null and void anyway. Because I'm not having the players to play it with. That's just the thing. Sandbox campaigns feel like they lead to that, and they might lead to it, if not done correctly, in my opinion, but they can definitely work. It's just watch out for the moments where your characters and the players really don't know what to do. Because that stuff happens, and it's best we all agree to it that happened and fix it fast.
Yeah, and I think as a player, don't be afraid to tell your GM that you don't know what to do, or you don't have all the information that you think that you need. Just you as a player can also break the fiction as well. It's not always on the GM just to fix these things. It's always on both sides, because it's a collaborative game.
Yeah.
You work together to create a fun story and an enjoyable time. So work together. If you feel like there's something missing, ask your GM about it.
Yeah. If you want to break fiction and say, I don't really know what to do here. I'm sorry. Can we maybe rewind a few minutes so I can get the information that we just got again, and then maybe evaluate if I have something to do? Or can you just tell me in clear words what just happened, and so that I can act? Both are fine. But okay, we've talked about breaking fiction to make sure that the fiction stays intact. Breaking the wall down so we can build a stronger wall afterwards. But what if we don't want to or don't have to go to these measures? Because there is maybe some sort of fiction happening, but your players are, or the characters are, plagued with option paralysis. They have too many options. You know which ones would be, not necessarily which one are the best, but which one might be the most fruitful, or whatever you want to call it. Not which ones are the right ones, but maybe there are a few options that you think those maybe won't lead to anything that they are currently wanting to do. And there are other options that do lead to something that I think that they want. Right? You know more than your players as a GM. And sometimes you can use that knowledge to see clearer in the forest of options that your players have. Yeah. And if you see that option that they are discussing isn't really what they actually want, they just think that it is, maybe I can clear up something. How do we do that without necessarily breaking fiction if we think that in fiction, the fiction is intact? We don't need to break it because it is not broken yet. How do I, in fiction, work with my players to get them to where something happens so they can continue their story? I don't want to say where I want them to go, because I don't necessarily want my players to go anywhere as a GM. I just want them to be somewhere. I don't want them to stay in the tavern all day. I want them to be out there and experiencing and engaging with stuff.
I think one way to do that is just to close off multiple options, or the options that don't or you think wouldn't lead to anything fruitful. Like through a NPC that just enters the tavern and says something happened, blah, blah, blah. And now the players know this option isn't an option anymore. Because, for example, they wanted to look at the library, but the library just closed. Something like this. I don't know.
It's closed.
It's closed. You can't go there anymore. Or something like this. Or try to push a different option or make it more gullible for the players. Like placing out bait by different NPCs through different ways of how you can convey information to your players. We talked about this in an earlier episode, how you can do that. But just use some of those tools to lay out bait for your players, basically, and see where they bite. If there's still too much bait, focus on even fewer options. Yeah. And so on and so forth.
Yeah, you can trim down the options you have. This isn't necessarily railroading in the way that most people agree on it. Some people might still call it railroading, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. Some people might still call it just the way to do it, and I would say, yeah, sure, why not? The thing about this is that you're just trying to make the game the most enjoyable it can be for the people you're playing with.
Exactly.
If that means railroading them a bit because the game calls for it, do not feel ashamed to do it, because it isn't bad. It is what currently is called for.
Exactly.
And that's okay. Most people will not have a problem with that. Please do not take online discourse where all railroading is bad and improvising is the best way to do everything. No, it isn't. Sometimes you should have a clear path as a GM. Sometimes you don't. Nuance is important in every step of the way. And that is why we can create 115 episodes, 60 hours long, 60 minutes long to talk about TTRPGs. Nuance is important. Discussions are important. Hearing multiple points are important.
Yeah, nothing in TTRPGs is binary. It's always a spectrum of things. And you have to find the right balance for your table. And it differs from table to table, even if the GM is the same. Or even if everyone at the table is the same, one campaign can feel completely different to another.
Just because of the characters.
Just because of the characters, just because of the story that you all decided to run, it asks for different things.
Yeah.
If you decided to run a more free, open-worldy, sandboxy type of thing, and the next campaign that you're doing has a clear-cut goal because you all decided on it, the feel of the table will completely change. And that's not a bad thing. It's just something that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah. And I think one of the fun things is, for example, the library example you just gave is a good one, in my opinion. Because the way I often do it, because I don't like to have this Deus Ex Machina, me showing my players what they are supposed to do or not closing off paths quite literally. Right? I don't want my players to discuss, okay, let's go to the library. 20 seconds later, someone runs into the tavern. The library burned down. Fuck, we don't have our books anymore. Obviously, that's very direct, and you can obviously make it a lot more subtle, but you get the point.
Yeah.
I like to do, go to the library. And at the library, they can then start looking for books and stuff and information about the stuff that they want to do. And oftentimes, that will then be rather unfruitful of a research. But first of all, they did something, even though it didn't lead to something. Sometimes failure and going to dead ends is okay. And second of all, I can then have a place where I can just place something that is important to them. Exactly. Or that they needed for the moment to go. For example, the players go to the library because they want information on something where I don't have anything really that I could give them more as information. What I can now do is place a crucial NPC in that library that can help them in that second. Easy peasy, no problem. The NPC didn't exist, maybe existed before, maybe it's even a friendly NPC they already know. But the act that they did something, even though it wasn't gonna be fruitful to the further parts of the narrative, I can now make it fruitful. And I'm not saying use the illusion of choice and then place the important information at the library, because even though your players are supposed to find something out about, I don't know, a vampire clan in the city. And they say, let's go to the library first to find out about vampires. First of all, good thinking, get information first before looking for them. But second of all, now they're at the library at night. Maybe someone is there. Maybe that person is a vampire. That person is not going to necessarily lead them to where they are supposed to go or something, but it gives me another point of interaction. And those points of interaction are what we want, because it's points where your players can connect to the world and the NPCs and everything in the game and work with that and play with that.
Exactly. Points of interaction is a beautiful thing that you just mentioned, because I think if you want to push or close off certain paths, specifically is not a good idea, but push certain points of interaction wherever they may be is a way better thing. It doesn't have to be, you can't go to the library or you have to go to the library. But if they want to find out some information and decide they want to ask around the city, push those points of interaction wherever they may be. Or if they just want to go into the woods and forage for some mushrooms, that doesn't help them in getting the information that they want. But if you push the things where they have the chance to get the information that they need, some points points where they can interact in a meaningful way with the story that you all want to tell, is a better way than just saying, I just moved the information to the woods where they forage for fucking mushrooms.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's if the players are doing something to maybe pass the time or because they think that this is the best idea, first of all, kind of reward them, but don't just give them everything, because they should still work for it and not just always expect the first path to lead to the right solution anyway.
Exactly.
But if they go to the library, maybe they will find some books on vampires, and then you can give them information that vampires like the smell of rotten fish. Boom, you just made up a fact for your fiction, but that gives your players information. Maybe we should go to look at the fish market. Wait, where were those victims again? They were all in the areas of the fishing district. I think we will know where we have to look. even though the library visit was never intended by you or actually needed for them, you push them gently with a point of interaction, the library, to the actual point of interest, the fishing district.
Just putting up small little, not barriers, but points where they are nudged in the direction that they wanted to go all along. Because usually players tell you what they want to do in the long run. Even if it's not, I want to go to that place and look at this specific book. This usually doesn't happen. But they say, we want to stop that fucking vampire clan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you place information or points of interest, points of interaction to nudge them where they wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
It may take a couple of sessions, but they bounce around towards the place that they wanted to go to all along. Just it's not really, you're not forcing anything on your players.
You're not.
Because you just give them choices, basically, without insisting on this or reinforcing this option paralysis. Because through the information and options that you give them, you reinforce some other options that they wanted to choose or could choose. Because just with new information that they learn through points of interactions, some options are way more interesting to them than others. And therefore the balance of the options shifts and then leads them out of option paralysis just by giving them more options in a way. It's a difficult thing to describe or to grasp, because curing option paralysis with more options might sound counterintuitive, but you have to create the right options for them to choose.
Option paralysis, right, is that you just cannot decide between the options you have. There are too many good ones, or there are too many for you to actually choose from. And sometimes the solution is to just cut down on those options. Talk to your players within the fiction or without the fiction on what of these options won't be very fruitful, and then they have less, and maybe then they can decide. And sometimes it can also be adding a very great option that they didn't consider at first. And then they go, let's do that one. That's obviously the best one. And then they go. And then they find out the stuff they want to do. And then they finish their objective. But now they finished their objective. Now they don't have a clear objective right now. They are in between quests. They are in between campaign arcs. They are having nothing to do. How do we make sure that the fiction still kind of moves forward and the game doesn't grind to a halt between objectives, between campaign arcs, when there is no options right now, but also we don't want to break fiction?
I think this is one of the toughest phases for me as a GM, usually, when they have finished this one big objective that they've worked the last 15 sessions for. And now they have maybe 1 or 2 sessions where they just realize what happened and get their shit in order, what they wanted to do, just the repercussions are playing out. And during that time, you have to put in new seeds that can grow for your players to see options that weren't there before because they were focused on this one. And then create options or create new ideas for them to go certain directions. Or listen to your players, what they are doing after everything, and see what they want to do next, basically. If they don't want to do anything, just throw random shit at them, basically. Some story beats, some story seeds, some backstory things. Just throw it at them and see what sticks. And then you have a way, or then you know what they wanted to do, or they point in a certain direction, and then you can fill that path that they want to take with the things that are needed for that path.
I think, especially in these points between things, we've talked about the space between adventures. It's downtime.
Exactly.
It's okay to just say, okay, you have nothing to do right now in the fiction. You can take a break. What does your character do to take a break before we get to the next objective? And then you give them points to shop where they can buy equipment. You can give them a spa day. Maybe you say we will skip over a few weeks of you guys adventuring if you just want to adventure further. But that's not the point of our fiction right now, so it doesn't matter for us. That's okay. But downtime is a part where you can say there's currently nothing major objective. There's currently no major objective in the fiction. Let's take a couple minutes to think about what your characters do when they have nothing to do. What do they do to do something? Do they go after their hobbies? Do they tend to some other thing? Do they write letters to their families or stuff like that? That's great, first of all, because it shows another side of the fiction, which is great to see. But there's also another way, in my opinion, that I like to do. If there's currently nothing happening, I just think about how can I drive the interpersonal drama of my group forward? How can I throw a grenade in the middle of the group and just see what happens? One of them, for example, was when I knew that there was a few days before they could go to the next quest in one of my games was, in my Tyranny of Dragons game, was to attack their home. Yes, that was somewhat called for by the book as well, but not at the point where we currently have. That was supposed to be at a later date in the fiction of the book. And I thought to myself, this would fit great because our players are currently have nothing to do now. They have no options. They are currently just sitting around. So why don't I attack their home and throw one of the biggest dramatic grenades in there and see how they react? And it created an amazing later part of a session, 2 hours to be exact, that I would not have gotten any other way. There was panic, there was fear, there was action, there was real questions brought up by the characters afterwards. They know where we live. We have a problem. They can attack us in our homes at any time. What do we do? That's great. It drove the characters forward, in my opinion.
This is one thing that you can do as well when your game starts grinding to a halt, is just, as dumb as it sounds, motivate them in some way, shape, or form. By being attacked, like you just said, or just some new information that flew in. Something that just gives them their drive back to decide on one thing that they want to do rather quickly. It just sounds weird if they don't have motivation, motivate them.
That sounds so easy, right?
Sounds so easy, right? But it's just a thing that you have to figure out.
It's not even that hard to figure out. And now it comes to what I wanted to talk about. You as a player, right? You also, as we said before, you also have some kind of a responsibility. You can also make sure that the game never grinds to a halt and moves forward.
Yeah.
Look at your character and see what would they do now in the situation. For example, one of the times where I was like, my character would do something, so I can do something as a person. So what do I do? And what I did was, with my character Rin in one of our home games, was to go out on a field and ask the farmer, do you give me money if I make your field grow faster and more fruitful?
Yeah.
That was not prompted by the fiction. That was just me saying, this is what my character would do now, because she has nothing else to do. So why wouldn't she just do it? And she did. And so I did something. And this is something that you as a player can always do. Look at your character and see, is there something I can do right now? And if you answer that question with yes, then do it. No matter what else is happening, if you have something to do, or if you think that there is something to do it. Just fucking do it. Do not think, maybe this isn't the best idea. Do it, because it can spawn the most cool, fun interactions you would have never gotten otherwise. Another example, our wizard in one of our other games, the Archmage, decided to pet his horse at night and then got attacked by 27 poisonous porcupine.
Yeah.
Hello? That was 4 hours of the most fun I had at the table in a while, because I laughed so fucking much. This was great, but it only happened because the player went, yeah, no, my character would do this, I'm doing it. He could have just went to sleep and nothing would have changed about the fiction, because our objective is still the same. But still, he said, I'm gonna do it because I would do this now. And he did it, and the game was more glorious for it. So if you're a player, create your characters in a way that makes sure that they always have some kind of drive to do something in situations, that you have characters that are proactive.
Yeah.
Not just reactive. They should be the ones that do stuff. Because that is, for me, what makes a good character. If someone ever asks me what makes a good backstory or what makes a good character, my answer is always going to be someone that does something or something that motivates them.
Yeah, that they always have a reason to do at least something, whatever it may be. As you just said, it may just be petting your fucking horse in the middle of the night. And then this leading to some other points of interaction where you can do shit. But as long as you have the drive to do something that may lead to something else, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Do it. And it might be hard as a GM to work with some of the curveballs that your characters then throw at you through this. But that's a topic for a completely different episode. But yeah, just as a player, you can always just throw shit at the back at the GM as well. It's not always the GM isn't just the shit thrower all the time. It can always be the players as well, or just spark up a conversation between characters to in character discuss some things that happened on the journey before, and there through that coming up with an idea what you want to do next if you have no objective. Not only talk to your GM, but talk to the other players as well. Always is keep talking. It's a communication game, basically. Everything about D&D is just communication. It is key. Either between the GM and the players and the other players, the characters and the NPCs, the characters and other characters of that group. Just keep talking, basically. But take your time with it, as dumb as it may sound.
No, yeah. It's all nuance.
Yeah.
Evaluate every single situation you have and make sure that you always have to do something or can do something. Make sure that you can always look out for your other player characters and other players. Make sure that you work with everyone together. There's a lot of stuff. But again, you're all doing that most of the time anyway. Sometimes there's a moment where you realize, oh, now nothing is happening. What do I do? And this is exactly what this episode is for. Think about the moment. Think about it a bit. Oh, yeah, that's something I can do. I will do that. And then everyone goes, but why do you do that? That's not part of the objective. Well, it isn't, but at least we're doing something now. I'm not the one that I don't want to make a plan for 3 hours. I will take the plan that we have now. And if you don't like it, stop me. And that has nothing to do with the plan, but it suddenly devolves into a personal drama of I am prepared enough. I want to do this. And the others going, no, we're not. We're trying to stop you. That's a cool moment.
And one thing to keep in mind is if your game grinds to a halt and you want to fix it, it's not a big problem if that happens. Just work with everyone at the table and fix it.
Yeah.
It's
not a failure on anyone's part.
Exactly. It just happens. It's just basically part of the game. You don't need to stop. You don't need to forcefully reject it happening ever. It's just it happens and move on. But that's the thing. You have to move on from it.
Yeah, because if you don't move on, then you have a problem.
Exactly. If you let this moment completely overshadow everything, oh yeah, we stopped for a minute, now I don't have the energy to do anything else, that's the problem. But if you see something happen, or nothing is happening, and then you decide together as a table how to fix that, that's perfectly normal, happens every time or all the time, happens in every game, I can assure you that. Or at least every game I have been part of, either as a player or a GM.
Yeah.
It happens in every game. Not necessarily in every session, but it happens more often than most people that are not as invested in TTRPGs as maybe we are think. Because it's just a part of the game itself.
Yeah.
Because you want to have, or you want your players to have all the agency that they want and that they need. This can lead or will eventually lead to sometimes just them not knowing what to do. And then just go with it.
And one small thing, because we live in an age of actual plays, do not look at actual plays and think to yourself, but they don't have the fiction ever stopping. Why should my game have that? I want the game that they are having. First of all, many actual plays, like Dimension 20, or most podcasts, are cut down. They leave that out because they realize there are a show where that fiction break is not needed. And the ones that don't, for example, Critical Role, the biggest one of all, they have 7 players normally at their table, plus a GM. They are all trained performers. They are paid actors, not for the show necessarily itself, where they are paid, but they make their money in show business. They also have been trained to make sure that fiction always moves forward in this instance, that there is never a point in time where their show is just them sitting around the table and not doing anything.
Exactly.
They know that. They are trained professionals at being entertainers and actors. Do not try to aim for the stuff that they are doing on their show, because you're not their show. You're not producing a show right now. And if you are, make sure that you minimize the fiction breaks. But even those are part of the play experience. So you don't have to be afraid of them.
Exactly. That's a big thing. Don't be afraid of them. It's just a part of the whole experience itself.
Yeah.
And I think in some cases, these might feel shitty, but kind of don't, if you know what I mean. If the game grinds to a halt and you all together work with it to make it go smoothly again, basically fix the engine of the car that you're all in, but together can lead to a great moment at the table itself, even if the campaign or the story or the plot or whatever isn't advancing at that moment. But you're still there having an awesome time together, even though the fiction itself grinds to a halt. Can also be a thing that happens. So don't be afraid of it. Just work with everyone at the table to make it a smooth sail along the ride after that, or at least until the next stop. Because there will eventually be another stop, just like a bus ride. You basically go from stop to stop and hope, or just work as quickly as you can to have still a fun ride.
Yeah.
And with that, I don't have anything else.
I have nothing else as well.
So thank you all for listening, and hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of DoubleDM. It appears you liked this one. What we had to say and our advice helped you. Why not show us how we helped you in a rating, or even write a review detailing us how we helped? you can do this on the platform that you are listening on right now. It's just a few clicks, doesn't take long, and helps us out. It gets us out there and our advice into more ears of more people. Thanks again for listening and joining us on this amazing journey. Have a great day, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.